And please do take the conference survey. Ask a member of the events team if you need access to it, and we'd appreciate that, and there's some prizes for people taking part in that. Okay, I think we're good to go. So let's welcome our panelists on stage. This gets to the heart of communications in many ways. It's when organizations, as we know, are operating in such an intensely polarized political and social environment. We've got a panel that cuts to the heart of purposeful business and communications. So let's welcome the panelists on stage. Kim Olson, who's CCO at Land of Lakes. Les Cunningham, SVP Comms and Corporate Marketing at Bristol Myers Squibb. Kristen Campos, Vice President of Corporate Affairs at Mars Food North America, and was our Chair of Purpose Awards. AJ Jones, EVP Chief Communications and Public Affairs Officer at Starbucks. And Josh Ernest, SVP and CCO at United Airlines, and many of you will know Josh also as a former White House press secretary. So this is going to be slightly odd because I'm moderating from behind you, but
we suggested Captain Morgan pose right there.
Yeah, maybe 20 years ago. But all right, I've got my Slido. Yeah, so if you have questions during the session, please get them in on Slido. I'm sure you will have. But first of all, welcome everybody, and thank you for being part of this final session. Really appreciate you taking the time out to do it. And as we've heard over the last couple of days, there's so many different issues that you have to be on top of now. So we wanted to just sort of do a sort of audit of how do you do that? One thing with, as that Edelman survey that was referred to, is you're doing a lot more, but you're not actually getting the resources, the extra resources, and we'll dig into that a little bit. But the first question is, how has the continued evolution and increase in importance of the comms function been reflected in your organization and the pressure on you to deliver real results? So, AJ, I was going to start with you on that one. Over at Starbucks, how do you do that?
Well, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well. When you invite Starbucks, we're up early, so you have to appreciate the fact that we're going to be rolling and be going pretty aggressively. Before I answer the question, one of the things I have to do, I'm a Southerner by training, and so one of the things I've been taught is before you speak, you actually thank the people who made it possible for you to be here today. So one of the things I would ask of you all is to give a round of applause for all the people who organized this event, who put this event together, who made it possible, who made sure that not only was the event successful, but also brought us here together. So just thank them for that. I also definitely want to thank not only PRWeek, but more importantly, all of the elements that have been brought together to allow us to be here today. Now, at Starbucks, we do specialize in something called surprise and delight. And so what I appreciate, my colleague from Mars is passing out candy. What you will all know is that by the time that this conference is over, all of you will have in your inbox a $10 gift card, if you will, from Starbucks to be able to do that. And so that's what we do. That's how we do it in reference to it. So
Josh,
now that I have brought your reward points,
free air tickets, Josh. We want free. Any rise on free air tickets?
You know, so I don't know. So maybe Josh will have some free plane tickets or something like that. But we're gonna make this. We'll keep this rolling. So I think when it comes to delivering, in reference to Starbucks, just to give you a little bit of sense of things, my role is a global role, as you can appreciate. We have 40,000 stores across the globe in 87 markets. More importantly, we're representing about 600,000 partners, but we also have, if you will, food service points too as well. So not only do I have a B2B business, a B2C business, but I also have this responsibility of having a halo in reference to the brand in terms of where it shows up. We get asked to be involved with all kinds of issues that are sometimes intimate related, but also tangentially related, if you will, to the brand itself. So one of the things that you'll find among this role that I sit in is not only are we responsible for delivering message, content, positioning, and digital engagement, but we're also responsible for being the gatekeepers of culture. In all intents and purposes, we now have a new CEO who has come in to bear. He is landing now a new mission that we have brought in. He's also landing a new set of promises that we have brought in, and we're also landing a new set of values. Now, all that is well and dandy as long as it translates into a cultural shift that actually allows for alignment, clarity, and possibility in terms of reaching our goals and aspirations, both on the business side and also on the financial side. So one of the things that comms is then responsible for is how well are we moving those benchmarks across an audience of people. At the exact same time, I'm also having to reposition, if you will, what does it mean to be a participant within the marketplace from a media standpoint, and also what does it mean to engage, if you will, different types of stakeholders. I will say to you, my role has probably changed more traditionally than my predecessors, where I spent a lot more of my time actually with the investment community versus than maybe my predecessors had in the past. I also spent a lot more time globally too as well in reference to it. To be clear, the two largest markets for Starbucks outside of the United States are China and also Japan. We have over 6,000, we're closing in on 7,000 stores in China. If you can imagine, what that means is by 2025, we actually have more stores in China than we have here in the United States. It also means that in Japan, our third largest market, unique thing about Japan, they'll have 2,000 stores in Japan, but Japan's population is actually, native population actually shrinking. There's fewer people who are actually having babies. So they have to depend upon a higher level, if you will, of tourism to be able to bring people in. So what does that mean in terms of a Marcom setup? What does that mean in terms of engagement globally? How do we think about marketing campaigns and communication campaigns across various sectors and the timing of those? The last piece I would say in terms of the dynamics to deliver, I spend probably, like my colleagues, a large amount of my time also with our board too as well, and engaging them in the various sectors, if you will, not only in terms of our business, but also in terms of the way in which we're communicating the repositioning of the brand itself. We had the great fortune of having a very well-known founder, that being in Howard Schultz. And so now you have to think through how do you now elevate a team of executive leaders to be able to carry, if you will, both the mantra and purpose going forward. So I'm looking forward to discussing all those things today, but that, I would say to you, for me, those have been the two biggest areas in terms of delivery, in terms of focus there within.
Kristen, you brought the free chocolate, so you go next. How do you respond to that increased pressure to deliver results?
Well, first, I just want to make sure that Josh is going to deliver on free flights. No, enjoy the M&Ms, enjoy the Ben's Original. So what I would say is, I think at Mars we think about our function as more than just communications, right? We had a discussion yesterday, and we talked about how oftentimes communication is just the output of some of the stuff that we do. We refer to our function as corporate affairs, and I think it's a pretty accurate description of what we do because we get involved in pretty much everything in the business. And AJ, I think that's pretty much just confirming what you said as well, right? So I would say I sit on the leadership team. I'm responsible for making business decisions. I'm responsible for bringing the outside in, making sure that I'm protecting the company through those decisions, protecting the company's reputation, and driving programs and doing things in the world that will not only enhance Mars's reputation or our brand's reputation, but really make the world a better place, right? In the way that we do it. So that's what I would say.
Right, Les, is it very different in a heavily regulated environment in terms of delivering results?
I would say from a purpose standpoint, it's probably a lot easier because we're very focused on improving human health. And so all the work that we do, it's really to provide medicines for people who are literally either dying or very sick. So I would say we're very purpose-driven. And when you think about all of the work that we do, I think you're right. It's a bit of a misnomer in terms of what we're responsible for because we do the gamut from both internal to external to policy, speaking with governments. And I think particularly in pharma, we are very focused on the patients. And so we do a lot of work with patients around the world. And we're very focused on what we say, transforming patients' lives, because I think everyone around the world have literally been touched by somebody. If I ask you right now, how many of you know someone who have had cancer? You probably put your hand, everyone would put their hands up, right? And so when you think about our purpose, it's not just about providing medicines, it's health equity. So how do we make sure that our medicines available for every single person in the world, no matter where you live or who you are, or whether you have health care. And I think that gives us a unique way or a unique purpose when you get up in the morning, that you're really literally saving people's lives. And I think that's kind of the unique model for pharma.
And Josh, you've just added advertising to your remit. Does that given you a new perspective on measurement and delivering results?
It has, and similar to the other commentary you've heard already, our team has always been eager to grasp additional opportunities to contribute to the business. And when you think about it, it actually shows up in ways I think that the leaders of those other elements of the business don't actually expect. Our airline's growing really aggressively. We made a big splashy purchase of a bunch of aircraft. We need a bunch of staff to manage all those aircraft. When we came to the HR team and said, why don't we start using our PR and advertising functions to help you recruit? They were like, really? You could do that? Like, we got lots of ideas for how to do that. We certainly use that tool a lot when it comes to communicating with our customers, but doing more than just sales or new routes, but also information that they may need about irregular operations or changes to the schedule or other elements that are critical to the kind of experience that they have when they're choosing to fly the airline. So our ability to show up in ways that surprise other business leaders actually is a really good opportunity for us to make an impact on the business. Sometimes, when we meet those ambitious hiring goals, nobody's really sure. Is it because we've got awesome recruiters, or did we just happen to advertise? Are we hosting job fairs in the right markets? Or is it because we actually are putting, is it because of the success we've had in investing in the brand? We actually are a place where people are interested in coming to work. So I think the answer to your question, Steve, is it is often hard to measure precisely in a quantitative way the impact that we're having all across the business beyond just sort of raising profiles and creating a halo around our brand. But it's really important, and it's most impactful, I've found, when it shows up in ways that surprise other people on the executive team.
Yeah, and we'll get into whether you're getting extra resources, from the HR function for doing that. That's valuable work. Kim, apart from what dairy products are you going to be giving us for free? But
if you had refrigeration here, everybody would have a stick of butter in their mouth. I'm telling you what.
But how's it in your company and managing your brands?
Well, I'll tell you what, I have the best job in the world with the best boss in the world. So we think of ourselves as the circulatory system of our company. And for those of you, we love the butter. Please keep buying the butter. Our CEO says we have kids to send to college. Keep doing that. But we are also a 100-year-old farmer-owned cooperative. So we are owned by both dairy farmers, as most people know, and by retail cooperative, smaller community retail cooperatives. So we touch 300,000 growers, we touch 10,000 rural communities, and half the harvested acres in the US. Raise your hand if you eat. 1% of the nation is involved in agriculture, and 100% of us need to eat. So we are very focused on kind of changing the rural narrative. The best boss in the world, Beth Ford, she's our CEO. She's been CEO for 5 years, one of only 4 openly gay CEOs in the Fortune 500, a crime. The only woman in the Fortune 500 who is openly gay. So we have a unique story. It's more interesting than, hey, we're a Midwest farmer-owned cooperative based out of Minneapolis. And we've taken the opportunity to use that attention to better the position in the lives of our farmers in our rural communities.
So you all have different job titles, but you all cover similar areas, as with different remits. Corporate affairs seems to have taken a much stronger role across the business function. It's regarded and we've seen a bunch of restructures recently of teams to almost give primacy to corporate affairs, and you might even have a CCO that reports to the head of corporate affairs. Does that resonate with you, and how are you restructuring your teams, if so, to reflect that, and why is it happening? So let's start with Josh on this one.
Yeah, I recently did add advertising to our team, and the goal was, and I think we're seeing this across a lot of corporate affairs functions, is a desire for better integration. And the idea is that if you can get those teams to work more effectively together, you can deepen the impact that each of those teams has. And we've certainly have seen that when we, as we've really integrated our social media advertising and PR functions. And it takes a lot of different forms. And initially, there's a little skepticism about this, particularly in an industry like ours where the margins are often too narrow. Where there are some leaders who say, you guys are doing a great job with PR, what do we need to spend money on advertising for? And helping people understand exactly how those functions can work together in a way that makes not just the PR more effective, but also creates advertising opportunities for us that didn't previously exist. When you get to a place where you can make those things work well together, you can make a stronger case for those teams existing in the first place. So we found that to be both really effective from a business standpoint, but also really effective in terms of the impact that it's having on our business, but also really effective at making an internal case for the functions that we have and for them being resourced in the way that you described.
Yeah. Remember, if you've got questions, please use Slido. Maybe we could get the Slido thing up there so you can tell I'm an old person. It's the Slido thing, but it works very well, and you can ask questions, and we'll feed them into the conversation. Les, how about in your function? Is this sort of primacy of corporate affairs, is that just a sort of trade title story, or is it a real thing, and why is it happening?
It's a real thing. 2 years ago, we created the corporate affairs function, and we included ESG, policy, advocacy, communications, and patient engagement under one umbrella. And we did that because we felt we took a step and looked at, who are our stakeholders, and are we really, what are we doing? We're managing the reputations for all stakeholders, and we needed the group under one umbrella so we could have consistency of messages, of strategies, and just alignment. And then, from a personal point for me, I also wanted to do it around career development and planning as well, because I think very often, if you're in communications, you're often the stepchildren, and there is no, real career plan. HR has a plan, IT has a plan, they all have a career structure, and we just don't. And so that was an opportunity for us to pull that together as well. And so it's been a journey. Last year, when we created the function, we literally had to create new roles and also, kind of restructure the function. So, when I joined in January of 2022, I had 8 direct reports and only 2 in the role, and I had 40 open roles. So I spent the last 2 years filling these roles because it's a new structure. So I think it's an evolving one, but I see how it's really helping us to be more strategic and also have more impact as we, talk with our, the leadership team and our CEOs and just externally as well. So I think it's a work in progress.
You've actually got corporate marketing in your title. Yes. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So so my title is a bit weird because it doesn't tell you all the things that I have. So I have all the patient engagement communications. I have all the corporate marketing and creative services and the social media under that team as well, in addition to the internal and external financial issues, executive. So it's a bit of a hodgepodge, but it works. And then outside of the U.S., I have all the people outside of the U.S., so they're corporate affairs. And they're strong, what I would like to say, generalists, although I know that's not a term people like, but they do everything. So if you're outside of the U.S. for BMS and you do corporate affairs, that means you do advocacy, external, branding, executive communications, anything that is under the corporate affairs umbrella. And so we have very strong teams outside of the U.S. because of it.
Kristen, you've got corporate affairs in your title, but have you seen that take on added extra importance, and is the C-suite much more aware of its importance?
Yeah, corporate affairs actually sits in the C-suite in Mars, and I've been working for Mars for 12 years. I've always had corporate affairs in my title while working for Mars, which speaks volumes to the importance and the value that our leadership and the Mars family, frankly, place on our function. because Mars is the name of the company and it's also the last name of our owners. So super, super, super important. So we also, corporate affairs, well, it sits on the leadership team at the highest level across the globe. It also sits on each leadership team across every business unit in every country and every region across Mars as well. So it's not just about running campaigns. It's not just about protecting reputation. It is about making business decisions. It is about steering the company at every level of the organization. So I think because my predecessors did that so well, there absolutely has been more pressure to do that even better. And it's a great challenge to have, let me tell you. So it just makes you stronger and a better business leader. So I think.
Yeah, and AJ, talk about that corporate affairs piece in terms of Starbucks, but also that survey that says you're doing a day a week, which is non-comms work. I'm not sure how they define non-comms, because a lot of the things we're talking about, they are comms, aren't they? But they're just not. They might not traditionally be under it. But you don't seem to be, as a profession, getting the extra resources to do that, even though the function is respected so much more.
Yeah, no, well, first of all, I would be remiss if I didn't also highlight a couple of things. So one, I'm so grateful for my colleague Kim, who's on the panel. One of the things she mentioned was that she has a phenomenal CEO. I know that firsthand because her CEO also serves on our board. And so the reality is how we also are integrated also brings that together too as well. The reason why we have Beth Ford on our board for a whole host of reasons, not only because she's phenomenal, but because we are one of the we're the largest engager, if you will, of farmers across the globe in reference to the sourcing of coffee. So the idea of having somebody with coffee and farming experience is key to us. But then also, as you probably may know, 43.2% of our employee base is actually LGBTQA+. And so the idea of having that from a governance standpoint on our board all the way down also speaks to that. Similarly situated, since we're in Chicago, I have to give a shout out to our chairwoman, who's also the only African-American chairwoman of a Fortune 100 company, and that is Melanie Hobson. Some of you may know her husband very well. He's the creator of Yoda, if you will, George Lucas. And so from our standpoint, we have this unique dynamic in the board structure, I think, that also allows for me to have a lot more latitude than others. In terms of resources, I actually do get a large amount of resources and have gotten additional resources also because I push a P&L. So to be fair, one of the unique things I have under my structure is I also have all entertainment of Starbucks under my structure. So anytime you see any partnership, whether it's with Taylor Swift or, you name your artist or whatnot. I mean, I was just texting earlier before I came to this meeting with Jazzy Jeff. We're going to be bringing him to help us do a couple of things with a retreat. So anything that is around what we call the engagement of our partners, but then also corporate branding across all the different spectrums, if you will, whether it be within sports, whether it be within entertainment or within music or within art, we bring that. And that is a global function. Some of you might know the group Blackpink, if you will. Globally, we did a partnership with them in Asia. All that stuff falls up under my structure. So there's this unique kind of what I call cool factor that my comms function has that others, may not have. And so I think that is there. What I mean by pushing a P&L is we also, as a company, have a number of stores that we have to open on a regular basis, as you will, and continue to grow the market. Well, part of opening stores is being able to have, whether it be in this country or in other countries, the relationships across the entire structure to be able to allow for that to happen, to be able to get the best and marquee real estate, to be able to get the best opportunities in terms of positioning, whether it be in terms of whether we're in a mall or where we're on the side of a storefront or what have you, so that we are always where the customer needs to meet us. And then if you think about it, now that we're moving into a place of more convenience where people are asking for us to open up drive-throughs, asking us to open up pickup stores for convenience, all of those require a different type of model. So one of the things that Lakshman has, our CEO has created, is that there's codependencies across the entire leadership team in terms of our goals. So nobody can hit their goal, if you will, without somebody else's codependency against it. So right now, the goal that my operations team has in terms of opening new stores, renovating new stores, being able to make sure new stores are functioning at a profitability and margin level, I also share that responsibility from a P&L standpoint. So that changes, if you will, the nature of it. And my function has always actually sat at the CEO or at the C level. In fact, if you ever come to visit Starbucks in Seattle, which you're more than welcome to, we are the only function that is immediately adjacent to the CEO's office. My entire team. And so from that standpoint, it shows you just from proximity how we ultimately orient, if you will. We will tell you, first and foremost, we are a communications-led function. We're a communications-led company, and it's driven through our function. Each one of our baristas, each one of our partners, if you will, who you meet, is a transmission of the brand. And so with that, the way in which we think about the communication elements of all that is there. Now, one of the things I did do in terms of reorganizing, I used to have in my function something called marketing integration. What that basically was, if you ever turn on the TV and you watched a show or watched a movie and you saw Starbucks placement, that's what they did. They looked to different places, whether it was, I know some of you all are fans of Spider-Man or whatnot. We were in every Spider-Man movie as a result. And so there was elements around that they focused on. And one of the things I shared with my leadership team was, because I was pulling in ESG and getting much more tight around investors, I shared with marketing that I wanted to let that piece go. So I gave marketing back, if you were, because they had it before, I gave it back to them in terms of market integration, while then I took on ESG and social impact. And that allowed for us to be much more focused, if you will, and then to have much more direct, dedicated benchmarks in terms of how can we measure in terms of success.
Kim, just talk to that corporate affairs piece, and also, are you getting the extra resources you need to take on all the other things you're being asked to do?
Well, I think it's a different model. So today is Farmers Day. Happy Farmers Day, everybody. Just sort of happened. I take these things with a grain of salt because the 11th was Kim Day. So, you know, it happens. But what you will see on our social channels, if you take a look, is a video about Tulare, California, which is one of our member communities. It talks about, you know, the kids in Tulare and getting the kids back into the community. It talks about dairy farming and how that works. More than 90%, or just a little over 90% of farms are still family owned. So we are very tied in with our marketing department. So, you know, you see this video, it has to be representative of these 10,000 communities because our dollars are not big. Farmers are struggling out there. There's 1% of us out there wanting the family farm to, you know, survive. And they're worried about making money so that they can pass the land down to their kids. So we have a thing called patronage. So as a co-op, you know, we return money to our membership. So our budgets are very small. That's why the communications piece and the PR piece, because it is cost effective, is so important. But as I said, we're the circulatory system. So very tied into marketing. It's Farm Bill year, hopefully, probably next year. Very tied in with government relations. Beth sits on the business roundtable. So everything we kind of touch as a communications team, we relay information, strategy, and connection. So it's a good place to be.
Yeah, for sure. Josh, got a question from the audience for you. I don't know if you're going to answer it, but it says, how do you break down the budgets between the functions under your remit?
The advertising team has a much bigger budget than everybody else. That's a fact that we all live with. Fortunately, the advertising team is pretty generous with the resources that they do have. So if there are opportunities to collaborate with other parts of the team, then they do it. So, you know, sometimes that's social media, sometimes that's, you know, the PR team, and sort of using some of the advertising budget to help the PR team promote what they're doing in advertising. So we break up the budgets by individual departments. One team gets way more than everybody else, but they play very well in the sandbox. Good
to hear. I think we've got some agencies in. I love that noise, by the way, as an Englishman. That is America for me, and I love it. But anyway, Kristen, someone's asking, what do you value in your agency partners these days, and what advice would you give them for being good partners?
Well, I'm very fortunate to have an awesome partner. I won't call them out because I know there's a lot of agencies in the room, but thank you, Gabby. I think what we value most are scrappy, creative, impactful, ripple effect, reputation driving ideas, right? So Mars measures its success not only on shareholder value and, of course, the financial targets that we put out there. That's only like 25% of what Mars is measured on in terms of its success. The other metrics are driven by reputation. They're, making sure that we're making a positive societal impact, making sure that we are building relationships with and trusted relationships with our partners all the way around. That means our associates, that means our suppliers, that means our farmers. I'm a big farmer fan too, by the way.
Yes, girl.
Happy Farmers Day, everyone. So yeah, I mean, for us, it means driving reputation by doing something that is going to make the world a better place.
Good.
And can be amplified and scaled.
How about you, Les? What's the single most important thing you look for in an agency?
I think it's probably global capacity, because so much of the work that we do is not just US based, and really wanted to make sure that we have an agency that, even if they don't support outside of the US, they have relationships with other agencies that can help us.
Josh, there was a question about coming from a political background, which has been talked about a lot, how it's such a great skills to have to bring into the corporate world. Can you speak a little bit about that and what you found when you came into the corporate world?
Yeah, sometimes I don't know if I'm bringing skills or scars.
That's a great quote.
Maybe it's a little bit of both. Particularly in the day and age that we all live in, where everything gets politicized, these issues come up more and more often. And I think there certainly was a time where companies believed and then hoped that they would be able to get by just ducking and covering and lowering their profile and skating. And that's not the world we live in anymore. We can have a conversation about whether or not that should be the case. It's not the case. There are a whole host of reasons for that, but you have to come to a different TED Talk of mine for that. I think in terms of my own personal experience, the biggest, I don't call it a surprise, but the biggest change that I had to get used to is working in Washington, particularly at the federal government. It was not uncommon for the Obama White House to put out an idea that was like on the merits, so like at least a defensibly good idea, one that had strong public support based on polling data, and one that might have even at least partially originated on the other side of the political aisle. And yet, you would find a huge number of people that would come out and scream about what a terrible idea it was. Only somebody who was galactically stupid or totally corrupt would even propose this idea, let alone think that it was like an idea worth advancing. And what it did was it made me very comfortable with the idea that I might put out something that's really good, but it's okay if a whole bunch of people criticize it. And that's definitely not how the corporate world operates. But I think, again, because of some bigger societal changes, I think even the corporate world has gotten better with tolerating this idea that we've got a really good idea that's going to be really good for a whole bunch of our customers and a whole bunch of our employees. And if there are a few of our employees or a few of our customers who are mad about it, well, we're going to do it anyway. And I think that's the right approach. It certainly benefits brands a lot, in part because, A, if you're focused on doing the right thing and you do the right thing, that's going to be good for you. But also, we're also in a world that's so polarized that criticism, in some cases, ends up being a pretty valuable credential. Again, we can debate whether or not the world should operate that way, or if it's good that the world operates that way. I'm just telling you, the world operates that way. And sensitizing people at United to those kinds of ideas was a big part of what I have done there. And obviously, going through the pandemic, I think we all probably have multiple stories, whether it is of requiring our customers to wear masks, which seems like a really novel concept at the time it was. It was one thing to require your employees to wear masks, but actually requiring somebody who's paying money to do business with you to wear a mask before they do that business was surprising to people. We were one of the first companies to require it. We required all of our employees to get vaccinated. We had lots of tussles about that. But really focusing on doing the right thing and not just trying to minimize criticism has been something that has really benefited our brand. It's benefited the way that we run the company. And it is something that came naturally to me based on my political background, because I was pretty used to the idea that lots and lots of people are going to criticize even really good ideas.
Yeah. One of the best winners last night was Adidas 321, and I think what Kristen and I liked about it was it got all the marathons and all the other brands involved. It was such a good idea that they were like, yeah, look, we're going to do this, and that made it a fantastic thing. Kim, a question from another audience question. Is there a difference between caring and selling? And during tough times, which one is more important?
Come on, man. Let's see, caring and selling. Yeah, I think there's a difference, but I think for us, we have a dual responsibility. So it's on the dairy farmer's side, we take their milk and we make butter. So they are our member owners, but they are also our providers. And then, we get the butter out there and sell. So we sometimes we have to make financial decisions to make sure that our members are more profitable, and then the company might not be as profitable. And we do that from time to time because it's in our best interest for the communities to be healthy, not only from a social responsibility perspective, but from a financial perspective. We have a business called Truterra, which is a sustainability business. We have sequestered 262,000 metric tons of carbon in the last year. We have also given $5 million back to the farmer for that sequestration. So, we're always trying to balance both the caring and the profitability, because our members expect us to be profitable for them as well.
We're formally out of time, but I think everyone's enjoying hearing from our panel. Should we go on for a few minutes? Yeah. Okay. A sort of final question. We've talked a lot about ESG, purpose, responsible business, the different labels, whatever you want to label it. What is next for that as we head into what is going to be a febrile 12 months leading up to an election where even the phrase ESG becomes a complete political hot potato? So let's go down the panel and just sort of get your thoughts on that, given that we are sort of a Purpose Plus event. I'll start with you, Kristen.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think the bottom line is, and I think everyone would agree, it's not over, right? There's just going to be more demands placed on companies worldwide. There's going to be more expectations from our customers, from our consumers, from our associates, that we will be making the world a better place. And we will be making decisions that won't please 100% of the people 100% of the time, but they're the right things to be doing for society and for the planet. The pressures will not stop, and I don't think I'm saying anything that's super controversial here. I think for our profession, that means we need to continue to evolve. We need to keep, becoming futurists. We talked about this yesterday as well. We need to be vocal, sometimes being a bull in a china shop and with our leadership teams, and not always taking the popular stand to do things that may seem really different. I think probably many of you participated in David Hugg's presentation today in his panel. I had an opportunity to have a conversation with him. I think all of us did. He is here right now, but he represents the future. Like, he's going to be sitting in the board chair, and his peers are going to be running the company. We need to evolve to meet those expectations. We need to evolve to do what's right in the world, and again, to advance it, to become a better place. Do I have the answer on how to do that right now? No, but I'm willing to keep trying.
Well, gosh, It's the hardest part of our job, right? So, and it's changing. 3 years ago, you better say something about this issue. More recently, you better not say anything about that issue. Oh, good Lord, you know, I'm getting dizzy and I'm getting old. But what we say at Land O'Lakes is that we talk policy, not politics. So Beth is on the President's Export Council with the current administration. When President Trump was in there, we met with him and his administration. We have our members' interest in the middle. And when we have a reason to say something, when our voice has relevance, for example, when COVID came in March 2020, Beth was one of the first CEOs out on TV. She did a CNN interview in early April talking about the safety of the nation's food supply, because we're a food company, and she thought that was important. If we don't think that we have relevance, or our members have relevance in an issue, then we're just one voice. And there's plenty of noise out there. Beth was at Most Powerful Women earlier this week, and she said, hey, we don't need any more noise. And when it's just a single voice, we probably won't engage. So, you know, that's the way we're going to approach it, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think the reality is that there are so many issues that are affecting society that companies are going to have to think about and make a stand on what they care about, because they can't care about everything. And I think one of the things that I do is, as I'm advising our CEO and the leadership team, is to really focus on how can it help impact our company, and how can we provide a difference in the world, and you know, pick your battles. So companies don't like to do it, but they're going to have to do it. So I think, to me, that's the one advice I would give, you know, any senior leader. You know, really think about what you want to focus on, and stick with it, because the reality is that people look at you and they see how you behave. And so, you know, you can say one thing, but your actions may be different a year from now. They will remember, and it will impact the brand. So I think that's something that we all are going to have to continue to wrestle with.
I think that's totally true. You know, at United, the approach that we've taken is to be less focused on trying to impress the ESG judges, whether you're a pro-ESG judge or an anti-ESG judge, and focus on our business imperatives. So a couple of examples. You know, the best example is there's a pilot shortage out there that if we don't address it, it's going to limit our ability to fly as many planes to as many places as we would like, and that's going to have a direct impact on our viability as a business. So we're actually the first, and right now the only major U.S. airline to operate our own pilot training academy. And we know that we can't just go to the usual places to recruit pilots. We have to consider recruiting people who may themselves have never considered a career in aviation before. Turns out it's a pretty good job. Our pilots just approved a contract to give themselves a 40% raise over the next few years. So we all picked the wrong line of work. But it's a great career, and an opportunity that is now open to people in ways that it wasn't before. So we didn't just open the academy, though. We also said that we were going to set a goal of ensuring that half the people that go through that academy are women or people of color. Our first graduating class earlier this year, it was close to 70% were women and people of color. So we are having a difference. We're not doing it because we're hoping to impress some people who are, you know, giving us marks on ESG. We're doing it because we need more pilots, and we're not going to lower our standards. We're going to make sure that we've got people who are going to be ambitious and driven, because it is hard work to become a pilot. I think once you become a pilot, it's a little less work. It's all the more reason why it's a great profession. The second example is on sustainability. Our business requires burning jet fuel, lots of it, billions of gallons of jet fuel a year. That also turns out to be really expensive. And it makes the largest expense at our airline at the whim of global commodity markets. That's a very difficult way to run a business. Wouldn't it be great if there were alternative fuels that existed that could power planes, that maybe they wouldn't be free, but the price would be more predictable, and they wouldn't go through the roof just because an authoritarian in Russia decides to invade Ukraine, that'd be a pretty good thing for our business. So maybe we should take the initiative to begin investing in new technology and new companies that are developing sustainable aviation fuel. That turns out to be really good for the planet, too, but it's also a business imperative. Focusing on these kinds of priorities for what they are, business priorities, and then helping people understand the positive impact they're going to have on the world, has been a really good recipe for us to engage in that debate in a productive way, without drawing too much controversy. We've had a couple. Tucker Carlson, back when he was gainfully employed, did a couple of segments on our pilot program. So it's not to say we haven't taken any static on this, but the good has far outweighed the bad.
Yeah, I'll continue with my colleagues. I think there's 4 things I would just leave you with. So one is ESG, whatever you want to call it, that actually is our business. The reality is nobody owns an IP on coffee. You can go get coffee anywhere. You can go buy it anywhere. You can do it yourself. You can make it at home or what have you. So the only main reason why you would think to be a part of a Starbucks ecosystem is because we are providing you a professionalized, personalized service that you feel good about every time you come into the store because we stand for something. And the reality is, if you look at our initial S1, which is when you go public as a company, if you look at our actual initial S1 and our first shareholder meeting, we have enshrined, if you will, as our goals, what you would call today ESG goals. So the reality is that's been a part of our business. We have cafe standards, which are basically standards in how we purchase coffee around the world, mainly because we wanted to be the premium buyer and seller of coffee. We have the ability to move the entire coffee market given the amount of coffee that we source. So the reality is there's a responsibility in terms of how you do this. Many of the quote-unquote ESG standards that are in place today were things that we designed in our company that then became the framework for how we get measured. So the reality is it's just a functional element of our business. Now, that being said, how you continue to integrate that through the business is key. And one of the things we have as our team, given that we lead on this, is something called S squared, I squared. So frame, scale, scope, impact, and intent. If you're doing anything within an ESG space, how well are you able to frame it, to scale it, to scope it, understand the impact, and be able to communicate the intent? If you have problems in being able to do that, it's probably not the thing you should be doing. And so the reality is, whether it comes around diversity issues, whether it comes around issues related to where we stand in terms of, most recently, for some of you all who are dealing with issues around Israel or what have you, all of those things run through that ultimate filter. Because in the end, unlike maybe other brands, we actually get called to weigh in on issues because of the fact that we have this siren that highlights issues that other people would not see or would not be involved with. I'll give you an example. We got reached out to maybe about 6 or 7 months ago, or maybe a little bit longer, by a very, very well-prominent and famous musician and artist to ask if we would say something about the issue around the lack of transfer of power in Ethiopia. Now, the reason why is because for many people would say the home of coffee is in Ethiopia. And we actually have a single source coffee from Ethiopia, what have you. The fact that we would get asked to do that when we really, in all intents and purposes, are not born in Ethiopia, we're not coming from Ethiopia, but the fact that people understood the power of the brand that we could bring if we highlight something says to people that if we were to step into a conversation there, that it ultimately allows them to feel better about the fact that they're purchasing our products from us, that they feel like we're connected with them and we're in these communities. Look, to be clear, you all had a shooting here at Highland Park a few months back. The store manager who ran that store opened their store to allow people who were evacuating from being shot into the store. That was not a part of some kind of playbook or something of that nature, but you would expect Starbucks to do that. And the reality is, because we did that, our relationship and our connection with the community is different than it is in other spaces. And so that is the reality. Now, is that ESG or is that something of some kind of sense of purpose? No, that's about doing business. And the reality is we have to rechange and calibrate the way in which we orient ourselves with communities to recognize that they are more than just the extraction of customers, that they are the propelling, if you will, the brand. And if you think of it that way, you have a better sense of what your purpose is and how your purpose leads to your business and how your business leads to your outcomes.
Thank you. I've just had a question from the audience saying happy hour, question mark, question mark. So I think
Wine time.
it's time to finish. Thank you so much for
And,
that brilliant,
and
brilliant
Josh
panel.
is sponsoring that.
Thanks so much. That was such a great panel to finish on, and we really value your expertise. Hopefully you can stick around to maybe talk to some of the young professionals in the room and network for a bit. That concludes our day. Thanks to all our guests, speakers, panelists. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've got something out of it. We really appreciate you joining us here for the last 2 days. Thanks to our conference sponsors. We couldn't do this without you. And look forward to convening again in 2024. Not much happening at this time next year, is there? So, yeah, thanks so much. Really appreciate you staying to the end and being part of this. You were terrific as an audience, really engaged, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.